Everyone in the room held their breaths. They expected tears. They expected a scream. They expected her to beg for a scrap of the empire she helped build. After all, Harrison was the shark, and she was just the trophy he was discarding for a younger model. But when Evelyn picked up that pen, she didn't cry. She didn't shake. She looked him dead in the eye. And she smiled. It wasn't a sad smile. It was the terrifying smile of a woman who knows where the bodies are buried. She signed the papers, took the keys to his most prized possession, and drove away. Harrison thought he had won his freedom. He didn't realize he had just signed his own death warrant. The air conditioning in the conference room of Felicity and Co. was set to a sterile 68 degrees, but Harrison Felicity was sweating. He tried to hide it, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke Brioni suit, tapping his Mont Blanc pen against the mahogany table. He was a man who moved markets with a whisper, a man who had just closed a merger worth $4 billion, yet the silence of his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, was unnerving him. Evelyn sat opposite him. She was wearing white. Not a bridal white, but a sharp, clinical ivory. A Dior power suit that cost more than the average American's car. Her hands were folded on the table, her manicure a perfect blood-red oxblood. "We don't have all day, Evelyn," Harrison said, his voice tight. He glanced at his lawyer, a bulldog of a man named Arthur Pence, who was currently checking his Rolex. "Sophia is waiting for me at the hangar. We have a flight to Aspen at 3. Evelyn didn't blink. She just tilted her head slightly, studying Harrison as if he were a particularly interesting strain of bacteria under a microscope. "Of course," Evelyn said softly. Her voice was smooth, lacking the jagged edges of a woman scorned. "We wouldn't want to keep Sophia waiting. She gets so anxious when she's not the center of attention." Harrison's jaw clenched. "Read the addendum, Evelyn. It's generous. Far more than the prenup stipulated. The beach house in Malibu, the liquid assets in the Chase accounts, and the alimony. It's enough to keep you comfortable for 3 lifetimes. Just sign it." Arthur Pence slid the document across the polished wood. "It really is a best-case scenario, Mrs. Felicity," the lawyer said, his tone dripping with fake sympathy. "Harrison just wants to resolve this amicably. No press, no court battles. A clean break." Evelyn looked down at the paper. "The dissolution of marriage." It sounded so final, so bureaucratic. It failed to capture the 15 years she had poured into this man. She had found him when he was a brilliant but socially inept coder in a garage in Palo Alto. She had charmed the investors he was too arrogant to talk to. She had smoothed over the PR disasters. She had quite literally cooked the books in the early days when the cash flow was non-existent, a secret she had kept buried deep in the vault of her memory. And now he was trading her in for Sophia, a 23-year-old brand ambassador who thought the NASDAQ was a type of nail polish. "I have one condition," Evelyn said. Harrison rolled his eyes. "We've gone over the assets, Evelyn. You're not getting the Manhattan penthouse. I need it for business, I don't want the penthouse, she said dismissively. It has terrible draft in the winter, and the concierge is a gossip. Then what? Harrison snapped. More stock. You know I can't dilute my shares right before the IPO. I want the car, Evelyn stated. The room went dead silent. Arthur Pence stopped clicking his pen. Harrison froze. Which car? Harrison asked slowly. The 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO, Evelyn said, her voice steady. The red one. The one in the climate-controlled vault in the basement, Harrison laughed. It was a bark of disbelief. Are you insane? That car is worth $48 million. It's the crown jewel of my collection. It's worth more than the Malibu house and the alimony combined. Absolutely not. Evelyn shrugged and reached for her purse. Fine. Then I guess we're going to trial. And if we go to trial, Harrison, you know that discovery implies a full audit of all your assets, including the offshore accounts in the Caymans that you forgot to mention to the IRS in 2018. Harrison's face drained of color. The sweating returned, instantly visible on his forehead. He looked at Arthur. Arthur looked terrified. They both knew that Evelyn wasn't bluffing. She had been the CFO of his life before she became just his wife. She knew where every skeleton was buried because she had held the shovel. You wouldn't, Harrison hissed. Try me, Evelyn smiled. It was the smile that would haunt him later. It was dazzling, cold, and utterly predatory. Give me the GTO, and I sign right now. I walk out, and you never see me again. You go to Aspen with Sophia, and you live your life. Deny me, and I will burn Felicity and Co. To the ground, brick by brick. Harrison stared at her for a long minute. He did the maths. The car was an asset, a piece of metal and history. But the audit, that was prison time. That was ruin. Arthur, Harrison choked out. Draft the transfer of title. But Harrison, the auction value, Arthur stammered. Do it, Harrison roared, slamming his fist on the table. 10 minutes later, the papers were revised. Evelyn read them carefully. She checked the VIN number listed on the transfer document. She checked the clause regarding the release of liability. She picked up the pen. Scratchy. Evelyn St. James. She capped the pen and stood up. She didn't look back at the paperwork. She simply held out her hand. Harrison, looking like he had just swallowed a lemon, reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple, worn metal key. It wasn't a modern fob, it was a piece of history. You scratch it, Harrison threatened, his voice shaking, and I will kill you. Don't worry, Harry, Evelyn said, using the nickname he hated. I know exactly how to handle high-performance machinery. Unlike you, she turned on her heel, the heels of her shoes clicking a rhythmic victory march against the floorboards. She walked out of the boardroom, past the weeping secretaries who had heard the shouting, past the security guards who looked at her with pity. Save your pity, she thought. You're going to need it for him. She took the private elevator down to the basement garage. It was a cavern of concrete and LED lights, filled with McLarens, Porsches, and Bentleys. But in the center, under a custom spotlight, sat the Ferrari. It was beautiful. A curve of Italian red, sculpted by the gods of speed. Evelyn walked up to it. She didn't admire it. She unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat. The smell of vintage leather and gasoline hit her, a scent of raw power. She put the key in the ignition. She turned it. The V12 engine roared to life, a sound that reverberated off the concrete walls like a dragon waking up. She put the car in gear. As she drove toward the ramp, she saw Harrison standing on the mezzanine balcony above, watching her. He looked small, defeated but relieved. He thought he had paid a high price, but he thought the transaction was over. Evelyn adjusted the rearview mirror to look at her own eyes. They were bright. "Goodbye, Harrison," she whispered. She gunned the engine and shot up the ramp, bursting out into the blinding afternoon sun of San Francisco. She didn't drive to her new Malibu house. She didn't drive to a hotel. She drove north toward the Golden Gate Bridge. Harrison thought she wanted the car for its value. He thought she was going to sell it at Sotheby's and live off the interest. He was wrong. Evelyn reached over to the passenger seat and patted the leather upholstery. She wasn't interested in the car. She was interested in what Harrison had hidden inside the car 3 years ago, something he had forgotten about in his arrogance. Something he thought was safe because no one ever drives the GTO. She merged onto the highway, the wind tearing through her hair. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Did you get it?" Evelyn smiled again. She typed back one word. "Secured." The divorce was final. But the war had just begun. And Harrison had just handed her the nuclear codes, gift-wrapped in a $48 million Ferrari. The Golden Gate Bridge was a blur of international orange against a cerulean sky, but Evelyn wasn't looking at the view. She was watching the speedometer climb past 80, weaving through tourists and commuters with the precision of a surgeon. The Ferrari 250 GTO didn't just drive, it sang. But underneath the roar of the engine, Evelyn's heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She knew Harrison. She knew that right now, he was probably sipping a scotch on his Gulfstream G650, feeling the smug satisfaction of a man who had trimmed the fat from his life. But she also knew that within the hour, his paranoia would set in. Harrison didn't trust anyone, and giving away a $48 million asset, even to silence a wife, would gnaw at him. He would start wondering why she wanted the car. And when he remembered, he wouldn't just send lawyers. He would send cleaners. Evelyn exited the highway in Sausalito, taking the winding roads down toward the docks. She pulled up to a nondescript warehouse with rusted corrugated metal sides. It looked abandoned, the kind of place teenagers broke into to drink cheap beer. She honked the horn, 2 shorts, 1 long. The heavy roller door groaned, and began to rise. Standing there, wiping grease from his hands with a rag, was Silas. Silas was a man who looked like he was carved out of granite and bad decisions. He had been Harrison's head of security 10 years ago, before Harrison fired him for having a conscience. Evelyn had kept in touch. She had paid for his daughter's braces. She had paid for his rehab. Evie, Silas said, his voice rough like gravel. He looked at the gleaming red Ferrari, then back at her. You actually did it. You took the Queen. Get the door, Silas, Evelyn said, killing the engine. We don't have much time. As the door rattled shut, plunging them into the cool shadows of the workshop, Evelyn didn't waste a second. She popped the trunk. Tools, she ordered. I need a socket wrench, a pry bar, and the finest scalpel you have. Silas raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. He rolled a red snap-on tool chest over to the car. You want to tell me why we are dissecting the most expensive car in the world? Harrison didn't just use this car for car shows, Silas, Evelyn said, kicking off her heels and grabbing the wrench. She moved to the passenger side. 3 years ago, Felicity and Co. was under investigation by the SEC. They were looking for the ledger, the record of the off-book bribes paid to the zoning commission for the Nevada factory project. I remember, Silas grunted. Harrison said the files were destroyed. Harrison never destroys anything that gives him leverage, Evelyn said, wedging the pry bar under the custom Italian leather door panel. He needed a place to hide the physical backup drive. A place no one would look. A place so valuable, so fragile, that no FBI agent would dare rip it apart during a raid. Snap. The fastener gave way. Evelyn peeled back the leather panel of the door. Underneath was the bare metal frame of the chassis. It's not here, Silas said. Look deeper, Evelyn commanded. She pointed to the window regulator mechanism. He had the car restored in Turin in 2021. He flew there personally to oversee the final assembly. He told me he wanted to ensure the stitching was perfect. Harrison doesn't care about stitching. She reached her hand into the hollow space inside the door, her fingers blindly tracing the cold metal. She felt grease, dust, wires. And then something that didn't belong. A small square object taped to the inside of the impact bar with industrial adhesive. She ripped it loose and pulled her hand out. In her palm lay a black solid-state drive. It was small, unassuming, and wrapped in anti-static plastic. Bingo, she whispered. Silas whistled low. That drive could put him away for 20 years. 20, Evelyn let out a dry laugh. Silas, this drive contains the records of his dealings with the oligarchs in 19. It has the schematics for the faulty battery tech he knowingly sold to the military. This isn't 20 years. This is life without parole. This is the end of the Felicity name. Suddenly, Evelyn's phone, which she had tossed on the workbench, lit up. Incoming call. Harrison, she stared at the screen. He knows, 30,000 feet above the Rockies, Harrison. Felicity was screaming. Turn the plane around. Sophia flinched, spilling her champagne onto the beige leather seat. Harrison, baby, what's wrong? We're almost to Aspen. Shut up, Harrison roared. He was pacing the narrow aisle of the jet, his face a mask of pure terror. He had been boasting to Sophia about the divorce settlement, bragging about how he had outsmarted Evelyn. I gave her the car, he had said. She thinks she won. And then the memory had hit him like a physical blow. The GTO. The restoration. The drive. He had hidden it there because he was arrogant. He thought he would always control the car. He thought Evelyn was just a stupid trophy wife who only cared about Pilates and charity galas. He had forgotten that Evelyn was a forensic accountant before she was a model. He had forgotten that she was the one who taught him how to hide money in the first place. He grabbed his satellite phone and dialed Arthur Pence. She knows Arthur. She took the car because she knows about the Chimera Drive. Arthur's voice on the other end was trembling. Harrison, if she has that drive. We are exposed. The DOJ will have a field day. Call Kalen, Harrison ordered, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Tell him to activate the tracker on the GTO. I want that car stopped. I don't care if he has to run it off the road. Do not let her get to a federal building. Harrison, are you saying? I'm saying neutralize the threat, Arthur. Do it now. Harrison slammed the phone down. He looked at Sophia, who was trembling in the corner. Get me a drink, he hissed. A double. He stared out the window at the clouds. You played a good hand, Evie, he thought. But you forgot one thing. I own the board. Sealers was watching a monitor on his workbench. Evie, we have a problem. Evelyn looked up from her laptop. She had been trying to decrypt the drive, but it was protected by a quantum-resistant key. She needed time. What is it? I sweep the car for bugs, Sealers said, pointing to a blinking red dot on his screen. Standard GPS, I disabled that. But there's a secondary signal. It just went live. It's a military-grade transponder embedded deep in the fuel tank assembly. I can't get it out without dropping the tank. They're tracking us, Evelyn realized. How far out? Sealers tapped a few keys. Based on the ping rate, I'd say you have less than 10 minutes before private security is swarming this place. And if it's Kalen, they won't be knocking. Kalen was the head of Redwood Tactics, a private military contractor Harrison used for sensitive corporate espionage. Kalen didn't do arrests. He did disappearances. Evelyn slammed the laptop shut. We have to leave. Now you can't outrun them in the Ferrari, Sealers said. It's fast, but it stands out like a flare in a dark room. Every cop and traffic cam in the state will be looking for a red 1962 GTO. I know, Evelyn said, her mind racing. She looked at the Ferrari, then at Sealers. That's why I'm not taking it. What? The car is the decoy, Evelyn said. They are tracking the car. So give them the car. You want me to drive it? Sealers asked, looking skeptical. No, Evelyn said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a heavy roll of duct tape and a brick she had found in the corner. I want Harrison to drive it. 5 minutes later, the garage door opened. The Ferrari 250 GTO roared out, tires screeching. It tore down the street, drifting around the corner, heading toward the highway on-ramp. Inside the car, the driver's seat was empty. A brick was taped to the accelerator. The steering wheel was lashed with bungee cords to keep it straight for a few miles. Evelyn and Silas watched from the shadows of an alleyway as 3 black Cadillac Escalades screamed past them, sirens blaring, chasing the empty Ferrari. "That was a $48 million diversion," Silas murmured, shaking his head. "It hurts my soul. It's just metal, Silas," Evelyn said, clutching the hard drive in her pocket. "This," she tapped her chest, "is freedom." They jumped into Silas's battered 2004 Ford F-150. "Where to?" Silas asked. "The Fairmont Hotel," Evelyn said. "The hotel? Are you crazy? That's the first place they'll look. Harrison thinks I'm running," Evelyn said, her eyes hard. "He thinks I'm going to the FBI or the press. He thinks I'm scared. I'm not going to run, Silas. I'm going to go to the one place he can't touch me. The public eye." The chase ended on the I-80 bridge. Kalen's men boxed in the Ferrari. They performed a perfect pit maneuver, spinning the classic car into the guardrail. Metal crunched. Glass shattered. The GTO, a piece of automotive art, was reduced to a twisted heap of scrap. Kalen jumped out of the lead SUV, gun drawn. He ripped open the driver's door, ready to drag Evelyn out by her hair. He froze. The seat was empty. Just a brick and some tape. Kalen touched his earpiece. "Boss, we have a situation." On the other end of the line, Harrison's scream was so loud it distorted the audio. "Where is she?" "She's gone," Kalen said, looking at the wreckage. "She ghosted us. And Harrison. She didn't take the car. She destroyed it." Harrison fell back into his seat on the plane, the blood draining from his face. "She had destroyed the GTO. She didn't care about the money. She didn't care about the asset. She was coming for him." Evelyn walked into the lobby of the Fairmont San Francisco like she owned it. She had changed in the truck. Gone was the white suit. She was now wearing a black cocktail dress she had kept in her emergency bag, diamonds dripping from her ears. She looked like a grieving widow or a celebrating divorcee. She walked straight to the Gold Room, where the TechCrunch Disrupt after party was being held. The room was packed with the elite of Silicon Valley. Venture capitalists, tech bloggers, startup founders. And in the center of it all was Grant Felicity. Grant was Harrison's estranged brother. The black sheep. The investigative journalist who had been trying to expose Harrison's corruption for a decade but never had the proof. Evelyn caught Grant's eye across the room. He was holding a martini, looking bored. When he saw her, his eyes widened. She walked up to him, ignoring the hush that fell over the nearby groups. Everyone knew about the divorce. Everyone was watching. "Hello, Grant," Evelyn said. "Evelyn," Grant said, his voice wary. I heard you signed the papers today. Congratulations on the big payout. I didn't take the payout, Grant, Evelyn said, loud enough for the people around them to hear. Oh, Grant raised an eyebrow. Then what did you take? Evelyn reached into her clutch. She didn't pull out the drive. That was too dangerous. She pulled out a single piece of paper. It was a printout of one file she had managed to decrypt in the truck. She slid it into Grant's breast pocket. I took the truth, she whispered. Grant pulled the paper out. He glanced at it. His face went pale, then red. He looked up at her, stunned. Is this real? He stammered. The cobalt mines. The child labor reports from the supply chain. It's all there, Evelyn said. And that's just page 1. I have 5,000 more pages just like it. Grant looked around the room. He saw the bloggers. He saw the cameras. Why give this to me? Grant asked. You could have sold this back to him for $1 billion. Because, Evelyn said, her voice trembling slightly for the first time. I don't want his money, Grant. I want his reputation. I want him to feel what it's like to be powerless. She turned to the crowd. A young woman with a camera phone was filming. Evelyn looked directly into the lens. My name is Evelyn St. James, she announced, her voice ringing clear in the banquet hall. And tomorrow morning at 9:00 a.m., I will be live streaming the contents of the Chimera Drive. If anything happens to me between now and then. The drive automatically uploads to every major news outlet in the world. The room erupted. Phones flashed. Whispers turned into shouts. Evelyn turned back to Grant. Get me out of here. Harrison watched the video on his phone. It was already viral. Evelyn Speaks was trending worldwide. He was in a limo, speeding from the airport to his lawyer's office. He threw the phone against the window, shattering the screen. She's bluffing, Arthur Pence said, though he looked like he was about to vomit. She can't release that info. She signed an NDA. NDA, Harrison laughed maniacally. Arthur, that drive proves we committed treason. Do you think she cares about a breach of contract suit? She's going to bury us. We have to stop the upload, Arthur said. We need hackers. We need to find where she's hosting the data. No, Harrison said. He wiped a bead of sweat from his upper lip. His eyes were cold, dead sharks. It's too late for tech. We need to get to her. Personally, Harrison, you can't be serious. She has a weak spot, Harrison said. Everyone has a weak spot. She has no family, Arthur reminded him. Her parents are dead. No siblings. You made sure she cut off all her old friends. Not everyone, Harrison said. He pulled a crumpled photograph from his wallet. It was an old photo from before they were married. It showed Evelyn laughing, holding a small dog. But in the background, sitting on a porch swing, was an elderly woman. Nana Rose, Harrison said. Her grandmother. She put her in that ultra-exclusive assisted living facility in Napa. The one that costs $20,000 a month. I thought she died, Arthur said. That's what Evelyn tells people to protect her, Harrison said. But I pay the bills. I know she's there, he tapped the intercom. Change of plans. We're going to Napa. Evelyn and Grant were in a safe house, a loft in the Mission District owned by one of Grant's encrypted sources. Grant was scrolling through the data on the drive. My God, Evelyn's. This brings down half the Senate. This brings down the Defense Department's procurement division. I know, Evelyn said. She was pacing, looking out the window through the blinds. You're safe here, Grant said. Nobody knows about this place. Harrison knows me, Evelyn said. He knows how I think. He knows I would go to the press. He's not chasing me anymore, Grant. He's changing the battlefield. Her phone rang. It wasn't a blocked number. It was the landline of Silver Oaks Assisted Living. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. She picked up the phone. Hello, Evelyn. It wasn't the receptionist. It was Harrison. Don't you dare, Evelyn whispered. She has dementia, Harrison. She doesn't even know who I am, but you know who she is, Harrison said smoothly. I'm sitting here with Rose. She's having a lovely cup of tea. She was just telling me about how much she loves the view from the balcony. It would be a shame if she fell. If you touch her, I will kill you myself, Evelyn snarled. Here is the deal, Harrison said. You bring the drive to Silver Oaks. Alone. No Grant. No cops. You hand it over and I walk away. I leave Rose alone. You refuse. And well, accidents happen in these old facilities all the time. I already set up the auto-upload, Evelyn lied. If I don't enter a code every hour, it releases. Then you better get here fast and disable it, Harrison said. You have 2 hours. Drive safe, darling. The line went dead. Evelyn dropped the phone. She looked at Grant. I have to go. It's a trap, Evelyn, Grant shouted. He's going to kill you both. I know, Evelyn said, grabbing the keys to Grant's motorcycle from the table. But he made a mistake. What mistake? He thinks I'm the same woman who signed those papers this morning, Evelyn said, checking the chamber of the small pistol Sealers had given her. He thinks I'm still playing by the rules. She pulled on a leather jacket. He's about to find out that I'm not the trophy wife anymore, she said. I'm the hunter, she stormed out the door. The game had changed. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about reputation. Now it was about blood. The Ducati monster roared beneath Evelyn as she tore up the winding roads of Napa Valley. The vineyards, usually a symbol of peace and luxury, blurred into streaks of green and brown. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the asphalt. Evelyn's mind was cold. Logical. It was the same state she entered when she found the discrepancies in the ledgers 3 years ago. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. Fear was a variable she had to isolate and remove. She knew Harrison. He was a bully, and bullies only understood force. But he was also a narcissist, and narcissists had a blind spot. They couldn't conceive of a world where they weren't the smartest person in the room. She reached the gates of Silver Oaks. It was a sprawling estate, more like a resort than a care facility. The iron gates were closed. Evelyn didn't stop to buzz in. She revved the engine, popped the clutch, and swerved onto the manicured lawn, bypassing the gate entirely. She skidded to a halt in front of the main entrance, the bike kicking up a cloud of expensive mulch. She dismounted, leaving the helmet on the seat. She patted the pocket of her leather jacket. The drive was there. But so was the pistol Sealers had given her. The lobby was empty. The receptionist was gone. The silence was heavy, artificial. "Harrison," she shouted, her voice echoing off the marble floors. "In the solarium, darling," Harrison's voice floated down the hallway. Evelyn walked toward the voice. Her heels clicked on the floor, a metronome of doom. She pushed open the double-glass doors. The solarium was bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. It smelled of jasmine and antiseptic. Harrison was sitting at a wrought iron table, looking relaxed. He had a glass of scotch in one hand and was casually scrolling through his phone with the other. Across from him sat Nana Rose. She was in her wheelchair, a blanket over her lap. She looked frail, her silver hair thin, but she was smiling vacantly at a blue jay outside the window. Standing behind Nana Rose was Kalen, the head of Harrison's security. His arms were crossed, and his jacket bulged at the shoulder where a holster would be. "You made good time," Harrison said, not looking up from his phone. "Grant's bike. A bit pedestrian for a woman of your taste, isn't it?" "Let her go," Evelyn said, stopping 10 feet away. Harrison finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. The stress of the last 24 hours was showing. He looked like a cornered animal wearing a human suit. "The drive," Harrison said, extending his hand. Evelyn reached into her pocket. She pulled out the black SSD. "It's encrypted," she said. "Biometric lock. You need my fingerprint." Naturally, Harrison smiled. He nodded to Kalen. Kalen stepped forward, pulling a knife from his belt. "We can take the finger with us, boss. Or she can unlock it now." Evelyn didn't flinch. She kept her eyes on Harrison. "You really think you can get away with this?" she asked. "Kidnapping. Extortion. You're already facing federal charges for the fraud. This adds a life sentence." "I'm not going to prison, Evelyn," Harrison said, standing up. He walked around the table, trailing his hand along the back of Nana Rose's wheelchair. "Because once I have that drive, there is no evidence. The digital copies. I have a team scrubbing the cloud as we speak. The physical drive. I'll melt it down to slag. And you're going to have a tragic accident on your way home. Grief, you know. It makes people drive recklessly." Nana Rose suddenly spoke up. "Levy. Is that you, dear?" Evelyn's heart broke. Yes, Nana. It's me. Who is this rude man? Nana asked, pointing a trembling finger at Harrison. He won't let me watch Jeopardy, Harrison laughed. A cruel, sharp sound. Shut up, you old hag. He grabbed the back of the wheelchair and jerked it violently. Nana gasped. That was the mistake. Harrison thought Evelyn was analyzing the tactical situation. He thought she was weighing the odds. He didn't know that Evelyn had already made her move before she even walked into the room. Harrison, Evelyn said, her voice dropping an octave. Look at your phone, Harrison frowned. What, look at your phone? You're checking the stock price, aren't you? Checking to see if the rumors hit Wall Street yet. Harrison glanced at his screen. It's funny, Evelyn continued, taking a slow step forward. You spent so much money on cybersecurity. You hired Kalen. You bought politicians. But you never changed the admin password on the Silver Oaks internal network. Felicity 123. Really, Harrison? Harrison's face went pale. What did you do? I didn't bring the drive to give it to you, Evelyn said. I brought it to connect it. She held up the SSD. This isn't the Chimera drive, Harrison. This is a broadcast node. And for the last 5 minutes, while you were monologuing, it's been paired with the facility's Wi-Fi. Suddenly, the large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall of the solarium flickered to life. It wasn't Jeopardy. It was a live feed. Of Harrison. Of Kalen holding a knife. Of Nana Rose in the wheelchair. You're live, Harrison, Evelyn whispered. A YouTuber. Facebook. Twitch. CNN requested a direct feed 30 seconds ago. Harrison spun around to look at the TV. He saw himself, looking terrified, staring back. The viewer count in the corner was ticking up frantically. 10,000. 50,000. 100,000. Kill the feed, Harrison screamed at. Kalen. I can't, Kalen shouted, looking at his own phone. It's bypassing the local router. She's using a mesh network. You wanted an audience, Evelyn said, her voice hard as steel. You wanted to be the center of attention. Well, here you are. Say hello to the DOJ, Harrison. Harrison looked at the camera, then at Evelyn. The realization hit him. He wasn't just ruined. He was destroyed. Kill her, Harrison shrieked, pointing at Evelyn. Kill her now, Kalen hesitated. He looked at the camera. He knew that killing a woman on a live stream with 1 million witnesses wasn't a job, it was suicide. I'm out, Kalen said. He sheathed his knife, turned, and ran for the patio doors. Coward, Harrison roared. He lunged for Evelyn. He was fast, fueled by adrenaline and rage. He tackled her to the ground. The SSD skittered across the floor. His hands found her throat. I made you, Harrison screamed, squeezing. I pulled you out of the gutter. You were nothing. You are nothing, Evelyn couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in her vision. She clawed at his face, her nails digging into his skin, drawing blood. But she wasn't panicking. She reached for her belt. Click. She pressed the muzzle of the small pistol against Harrison's ribs. Get off. Harrison froze. He looked down. He felt the cold metal through his shirt. He slowly let go of her throat. He raised his hands, panting, sweat dripping from his face onto hers. You won't shoot, he whispered. You don't have the guts, Evelyn coughed, gasping for air. She looked him in the eye. I signed the divorce papers, Harrison, she rasped. I already cut out the cancer. Pulling this trigger would just be cleanup, sirens wailed in the distance. Getting louder. Closer. It's over, Evelyn said. Harrison slumped. He rolled off her and lay on the floor, staring up at the glass ceiling. Evelyn stood up, adjusting her jacket. She walked over to Nana Rose, who was watching the scene with wide eyes. That was very dramatic, dear, Nana Rose said. Is he going to be on TV again? Evelyn smoothed Nana's hair. Yes, Nana. For a very long time, the arrest of Harrison Felicity was not dignified. The FBI didn't just knock, they breached. A tactical team swarmed the Silver Oaks facility, securing the perimeter. When they entered the solarium, they found Evelyn sitting calmly next to her grandmother, holding her hand. Harrison was still lying on the floor, catatonic. The footage of him being handcuffed, dragged out past the manicured hedges, and shoved into the back of a federal SUV was played on every news channel from Tokyo to London. It was the perp walk of the century. But for Evelyn, the moment the handcuffs clicked, the adrenaline crashed. She sat in the back of an ambulance, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, while a paramedic checked the bruises on her neck. You're lucky, Ms. St. James, the paramedic said. Another few seconds and... I know, Evelyn said softly. Grant Felicity pushed through the police line. He looked frantic. When he saw her, he stopped, letting out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. You crazy, magnificent woman, Grant said, walking over. You actually did it. Did you get the files? Evelyn asked. The FBI has everything, Grant confirmed. The drive you gave me earlier. It unlocked automatically the moment the live stream went up. They have the bribery, the faulty batteries, the offshore accounts. Harrison is looking at RICO charges. He's done, Evelyn. Buried, Evelyn nodded. She didn't feel triumphant. She just felt tired. And the car, she asked. The Ferrari, Grant asked. Totaled. Impounded as evidence. Good, Evelyn said. I never liked red anyway. Grant sat next to her on the bumper of the ambulance. So what now? You're the hero of the hour. There are already 3 publishers calling my phone, wanting your biography. Hollywood is asking for rights. Evelyn looked at the flashing lights of the police cars. She looked at the reporters gathering at the gate like vultures. I don't want to be a hero, Grant, she said. I just wanted to be free. You are free, Grant said. You're the richest divorcee in history, and you just took down a titan. You can do anything. Evelyn stood up. She walked over to where Sealers was talking to a federal agent. Sealers saw her and gave a sharp nod of respect. "Sealers," she said. "Boss," he replied. "Is the truck running?" "Always. Take Nana to the safe house for tonight. I don't want the press hounding her. Consider it done." "And you?" Evelyn looked at the darkening sky. The stars were coming out. "I have one last stop to make," she said. 2 days later, the boardroom of Felicity and Co. was in chaos. The stock had plummeted 60%. The board of directors was screaming at each other. Lawyers were running around like headless chickens. The doors opened. The room went silent. Evelyn walked in. She wasn't wearing the white suit of submission nor the black dress of vengeance. She was wearing a simple pair of jeans and a cashmere sweater. She looked like a civilian. She looked like herself. Evelyn, the chairman of the board, a man named Henderson, stammered. "What? What are you doing here? You have no standing here." "Actually," Evelyn said, tossing a folder onto the table. "I do." Arthur Pence, Harrison's lawyer, picked up the folder. He opened it and his jaw dropped. This is a transfer of voting rights," Arthur whispered. "Harrison's shares," Evelyn explained. "It turns out, in the fine print of the generous divorce addendum he tried to force on me, there was a clause about asset forfeiture in the event of criminal indictment, since he's currently being held without bail. His controlling interest reverts to the spouse until the divorce is finalized, which technically it isn't until the judge stamps it next week." The room gasped. "You own the company?" Henderson asked, horrified. "For the next 4 days," Evelyn said. "Yes, what are you going to do?" Arthur asked. "Sell it." "Liquidate it." Evelyn walked to the head of the table, Harrison's seat. She didn't sit down. She just placed her hands on the leather. "I'm dissolving it," she said. "You can't," Henderson shouted. "This is a Fortune 500 company. This is a criminal enterprise masked as a tech firm," Evelyn corrected him. "I'm initiating a Chapter 7 liquidation. We are selling off the assets. The proceeds will go to a victims' compensation fund for the families affected by the faulty batteries and the mining operations. You'll destroy everything Harrison built," Arthur cried. Evelyn smiled. It wasn't the scary smile from the first day. It was a sad, final smile. "Harrison didn't build this," she said. "We did. And now I'm cleaning up the mess." She turned to leave. "Wait," Henderson called out. "If you dissolve the company, you walk away with nothing. No alimony. No stock options. You'll be normal." Evelyn paused at the door. She looked back at the room, full of greedy, frightened men in expensive suits. "I have a '65 Mustang and a dog," Evelyn said. "And I have my name back." "That sounds pretty rich to me." She walked out. She took the elevator down to the lobby. She walked out the front doors of the building, she had spent 15 years of her life in. Silas was waiting at the curb in the blue Mustang. Nana Rose was in the back, eating an ice cream cone. Evelyn hopped into the driver's seat. "Did you fire them all?" Silas asked. "Every last one of them," Evelyn said. "Nice," Silas grinned. Evelyn put the car in gears. She looked at the city skyline one last time. It looked different now. It didn't look like a conqueror's map anymore. It just looked like a city. "Let's go home, Silas," she said. "Where's home?" Evelyn revved the engines. "I don't know yet," she said. "Let's go find out." She drove off, merging into the traffic, just another car on the road. But this time, she wasn't driving away from something. She was driving toward something. The federal courthouse in San Francisco was a fortress of granite and glass, designed to intimidate. But on this Tuesday morning in late October, the intimidation was directed solely at one man. The courtroom was packed to capacity, the air thick with the scent of nervous sweat and expensive cologne. Reporters from every major network jostled in the gallery, their pens poised like daggers. Harrison Felicity sat at the defense table. The bespoke suits were gone, replaced by a standard-issue orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. In the 6 months since his arrest at Silver Oaks, the titan of industry had withered. His hair, once a chemically enhanced chestnut, was now a shocking white. He didn't look like a billionaire anymore. He looked like a ghost haunting his own life. Evelyn sat in the back row, almost invisible in a trench coat and sunglasses. She wasn't there to gloat. She was there to witness the end of an era. Beside her, Silas sat stoically, his arms crossed, a silent guardian ensuring that even in this final hour, no harm could come to her. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Judge Catherine Vance swept into the room, her black robes billowing. She didn't look at the cameras. She looked directly at Harrison. "Mr. Felicity," Judge Vance began, her voice cutting through the silence like a scalpel. "You have been found guilty on 14 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of corporate espionage, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit kidnapping." The Chimera Drive evidence was irrefutable. You built an empire on the suffering of others and the deception of your shareholders. Harrison stared at the table, his hands trembling slightly in his cuffs. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Harrison stood up slowly. He turned, not to the judge, but to the gallery. His eyes scanned the faces of the people he had once commanded, searching for a shred of loyalty. He found none. Then his gaze landed on Evelyn. For a moment, the old Harrison flickered back to life, the arrogance, the sneer. He opened his mouth, perhaps to curse her, perhaps to beg. But Evelyn simply tilted her head, watching him with a detached curiosity. It was the look one gives a car wreck on the side of the highway, tragic but inevitable. Harrison's throat worked, but no sound came out. He slumped back into his chair, defeated. "Very well," Judge Vance said. "Harrison Felicity, I hereby sentence you to 25 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole." Furthermore, the court orders the immediate liquidation of all personal assets to pay restitution to the Victims' Compensation Fund. You are remanded to custody immediately. The gavel came down. Bang! It was a sound of finality that echoed in Evelyn's bones. As the marshals hauled Harrison away, the courtroom erupted into chaos. Shouting, crying, flashbulbs exploding. Evelyn stood up quietly and slipped out the side door, sealers shadowing her. They walked down the marble hallway to a small, private holding room where Harrison was being processed for transport. Evelyn had pulled a few strings with the prosecutor, her final play to get 5 minutes. She opened the door. Harrison was sitting on a metal bench, staring at the concrete floor. When he heard the click of her heels, he looked up. "You came to gloat," he rasped. His voice was ruined, a shadow of the baritone that used to command boardrooms. "No," Evelyn said softly. She stood on the other side of the heavy steel table. "I came to give you something." Harrison let out a dry, bitter laugh. "Give me what?" "You took everything. The company, the money, the houses. You even took my legacy. They're calling me the Bernie Madoff of tech on CNN. You did that to yourself, Harrison," Evelyn said, placing a single envelope on the table. "I just turned on the lights." Harrison eyed the envelope suspiciously. "What is it?" "Divorce papers." "I already signed them. Open it." Harrison reached out with cuffed hands and tore open the envelope. He pulled out a photograph. It was a picture of the 1962 Ferrari 250 GTO. But it wasn't the gleaming red machine he remembered. It was a cube of crushed metal sitting in a scrap yard. You destroyed it," Harrison whispered, horror dawning on his face. "That car was one of only 36 in the world. It was art. It was worth $50 million. It was a cage," Evelyn corrected him. "Just like the penthouse. Just like the marriage. You loved things, Harrison. You loved assets. You never understood that people aren't assets." She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. "I didn't sell the company for profit, Harrison. I liquidated Felicity and Co. yesterday. I sold the patents to open-source developers. I sold the real estate to affordable housing trusts. I dissolved the brand. By tomorrow morning, the name Felicity won't be on a single building in this city. You didn't just lose your freedom. You lost your name." Harrison stared at her, his mouth agape. The cruelty of it, the absolute erasure of his existence, was more painful than the prison sentence. He had spent a lifetime building a monument to himself, and she had turned it into dust. "Why?" he croaked. "You could have been a billionaire. You could have ruled the world." Evelyn smiled. It was the same smile she had worn that day in the conference room, the smile that started it all. But now it wasn't predatory. It was peaceful. "I don't want the world, Harrison," she said, turning toward the door. "I just wanted my life back." She knocked on the steel door. The guard opened it immediately. "Goodbye, Harry," she said, using the nickname he despised one last time. She walked out, leaving him alone in the cold, grey box, clutching a photo of a crushed car, realizing too late that he was the one who had been scrapped. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and clean. The sun was shining on the San Francisco Bay, turning the water into a sheet of diamonds. Silas was waiting by the curb, leaning against the fender of a pristine, vintage Ford Mustang, powder blue, with a white convertible top. It wasn't a supercar. It wasn't a status symbol. It was just a car. "How did it go?" Silas asked, opening the door for her. "It's finished," Evelyn said. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the air of a free woman. "He's gone, and the press," Silas gestured to the swarm of reporters camped out at the bottom of the steps. "Let them talk," Evelyn said, sliding into the driver's seat. She put on her sunglasses. "I'm done explaining myself." Nana Rose was in the passenger seat, wearing a bright floral scarf and holding a map. "Are we going on an adventure, dear?" Nana asked, her eyes twinkling. "Yes, Nana," Evelyn laughed, turning the key in the ignition. The Mustang's engine purred to life, a throaty American rumble that felt like a heartbeat. "We're going on a big adventure." "Where to?" Silas asked, hopping into the back seat. Evelyn put the car in gear. She looked in the rearview mirror one last time. She saw the courthouse, the lawyers, the sharks, the life she had escaped. Then she shifted her gaze to the windshield. The road ahead was wide and open, stretching all the way to the horizon. "Route 66, Evelyn said, a grin spreading across her face. "I hear the desert is beautiful this time of year." "And I promised Nana we'd see the Grand Canyon." She punched the gas. The Mustang peeled away from the curb, leaving the shadows of the city behind. They merged onto the highway, blending in with the traffic, just three people in an old car. Evelyn St. James didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had signed the papers with a smile, driven off in the billionaire's car, and in the end, she had traded the keys to a prison for the keys to the world. And the best part, she was driving. And that is the story of how Evelyn St. James turned a divorce settlement into a revolution. She didn't just leave with a car, she left with her dignity, her freedom, and the last laugh. Harrison Felicity thought he was the shark, but he forgot that the ocean is full of things much scarier than him. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, justice, and high-stakes drama, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a little inspiration to stand up for themselves. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Let me know in the comments, would you have taken the money or would you have exposed the truth like Evelyn? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.